Andy Sachs is about to win the biggest award of her life, until every phone in the room buzzes at once. Guess what? She just got fired. Everyone's does. Faces drop. The room goes silent. Andy's name gets called as the winner, but she walks on stage knowing her career just collapsed. She tells the stunned crowd that seconds ago, she and her entire team got fired, the company was acquired, and they're all out. And honestly, this opening hit harder than expected because the movie throws Andy straight into survival mode before she even tastes success. Later, Andy vents to Lily about her colleagues now scrambling for work. Lily reminds her she's talented enough to bounce back, but the scene quietly shows how brutal the media industry has become. Meanwhile, across town, Miranda Priestly glides down a red carpet, while Nigel watches a scandal explode online. A fast fashion brand Runway promoted just got exposed for unethical labor practices, and the internet is tearing Miranda apart. Nigel yanks her away before reporters swarm. Their business was already bleeding, this might finish it. At home, Miranda admits to her husband Stuart that the company tricked them. Before she can process it, CEO Irv calls, furious. He's getting death threats. His son Jay shows him the social media carnage. Miranda promises to fix it, but Irv tells her to stay out while he handles it. Then Jay spots Andy's viral speech, and suddenly, they have a plan. Here's where it gets smart. Instead of fighting the backlash, they decide Andy is the fix. Andy's scrolling hate posts about Miranda, when Irv himself calls late night. He saw her speech, knows she needs work, and offers her a features editor role at Runway. Andy meets her friends. Everyone says take it. One joke she should write a scandalous memoir about Miranda. Those sell like crazy. Andy laughs it off, but the second she's home, she texts a publisher, 50,000. This tiny moment says everything. Part of her knows Miranda's world is dangerous, but another part sees dollar signs. Next morning, Miranda tells Nigel that Irv's sending someone to handle the crisis. Neither trusts it. Then assistant Amari announces the meeting's here. It's Andy Sachs. Andy's thrilled to see Nigel, but Miranda barely remembers her. Nigel reminds her Andy was her assistant 20 years ago alongside Emily. Miranda's unimpressed. Andy explains Irv hired her last night. Miranda calls in the woman she'd originally hired, and fires her on the spot, blaming Andy. Classic Miranda. Even while her empire crumbles, she refuses to lose the room. They rush into crisis mode. In the car, Andy tries discussing strategy. Miranda cuts her off. First priority is Dior, 16% of Runway's ad revenue. After this scandal, Dior's squeezing them for every favor. They arrive at Dior headquarters, and Andy gets blindsided. The senior exec is Emily Charlton. Emily's shocked seeing them together. Miranda still barely acknowledges her former assistants. Andy introduces herself as features editor. Emily jokes she looks more confident now, though her eyebrows are still tragic. Then business. Dior might pull advertising unless Runway gives massive concessions, 3 ad pages plus a 5-page feature on their flagship launch. Nigel tries negotiating. Emily owns the conversation. Miranda agrees. Driving back, Andy can't believe Miranda caved. Miranda says coldly, no advertisers, no Runway. Andy pushes back. Miranda snaps that she knows nothing, was hired against Miranda's wishes, and will fail. She drives off, tells Andy to take the subway. This moment nails the shift. Miranda still acts untouchable, but Runway's barely alive. Next day, Andy meets second assistant Charlie, reconnects with Amari, who now works directly under Miranda. Andy jokes she used to have that job, even went to Paris, though she gave all the designer clothes away. Amari shows her to her office, a cramped, paper-stuffed disaster. Nigel visits, invites her to lunch. He drops the truth, Prince dying, budget slashed, quality tanking. And is shocked Miranda's obeying executives. Nigel explains she was about to become global head of content. This scandal killed it. Now she's cooperating to survive. Andy meets her assistant Jen, who rattles off credentials. Andy likes her instantly. Then she sees the unthinkable, Miranda hanging her own coat. Jen whispers HR got complaints about her throwing coats at assistants. She's banned. She's even publishing an apology Charlie's drafting. Next morning it goes live. Unexpectedly positive reaction. Jay shows Irv the metrics. Andy walks in hoping for acknowledgement. Miranda ignores her. Andy notices an old cover, billionaire couple Benji and Sasha Barnes. Post-split, Sasha inherited a fortune and vanished. Miranda's desperate for an interview, no luck. At a staff meeting, Miranda eviscerates everyone's work while Amari stops her from saying anything HR-worthy. Andy mentions her apology article helped. Miranda shuts her down. People reacted to the apology, not the magazine. Andy's job is making people read Runway, and until then, she has no business interrupting. Later, Andy complains to Nigel. He says bluntly, you want praise. You needed this job. Doing your job doesn't earn applause. This stung because it shows Andy sliding back into the toxic cycle she escaped. Over days, Andy works non-stop. She visits Emily at Dior's flagship, claiming she's writing about Emily's contribution. Emily lights up, gives the full tour. Andy says she's genuinely happy Emily succeeded. The conversation turns personal. Emily's divorced with 2 kids. Andy spent 15 years globetrotting before returning. Andy asks why Emily left Runway. Emily says luxury retail's the only fashion sector making money. Prince collapsing. The movie's real message hits here. Runway isn't fighting a scandal, it's fighting extinction itself. Emily drops another bomb. The magazine industry's dying, print won't survive. Then casually, despite everything, she's never read Andy's work. It's a tiny line that says everything. Nobody cares about journalism anymore. They care about branding, influence, survival. Miranda's on a tense call with Irv. Andy's articles aren't gaining traction. Nigel asks about the promotion. Miranda admits Irv stopped discussing it. Andy sits alone, stumped about what audiences want. Miranda appears, says bluntly, "None of your work's connected yet. You're running out of time before they fire you too." In complete panic, Andy blurts out she's working on a profile about Sasha Barnes. Miranda freezes. Sasha hasn't done press in 3 years. Andy confidently claims she already found a way to reach her, and an interview's coming soon. But the second Miranda leaves, Andy admits to Lily she completely lied, and has zero connection to Sasha at all. Searching online, Andy spots a photograph of Sasha standing beside a rare artwork. Lily recognizes the painting and reveals she actually knows the dealer who sold it. Andy immediately starts chasing every possible lead, until she finally gets Sasha's contact information. From there, she floods Sasha's team with interview requests. This whole sequence reminded me of the old Andy. Instead of waiting for success, she aggressively chases the story herself. At the same time, Andy and Lily start apartment hunting, because Andy's new Runway salary is significantly bigger. They tour a luxury apartment, where Andy runs into a man named Peter, who casually reveals he owns the building. Andy jokingly criticizes the apartment for feeling overly polished and complains modern renovations destroy the character of older buildings. Instead of getting offended, Peter agrees, and the two fall into playful banter. But before the conversation goes anywhere, Andy receives a message and rushes out. The message is from Sasha Barnes herself agreeing to the interview. Lily instantly asks Peter if he's single. The movie quietly setting up Andy's next emotional storyline. Before she realizes it herself, Andy races to Miranda's office with the news, and soon they head to Sasha's massive estate for the interview. Well, Sasha explains that after years of public attention, she's been focusing on herself, and plans to give most of her wealth away. Miranda asks why she suddenly agreed to speak with Runway after disappearing so long. Sasha admits the magazine's newer articles genuinely moved her, which is why she finally decided to come back. Then, off the record, Sasha reveals she recently got engaged and allows Runway to break the story first. Suddenly, the interview becomes a massive exclusive. Back at the office, Andy nervously waits for Miranda's reaction to the finished piece, and for once, Miranda actually likes it. Andy literally giggles from excitement, which honestly felt weirdly wholesome after watching Miranda emotionally destroy people for almost 2 decades. The next morning, Andy returns to finalize the apartment deal, and runs into Peter again. This time, he directly asks her out, and she agrees. During dinner, Peter reveals he's actually read several of Andy's articles and genuinely liked them. Andy seems shocked because most people in her life barely acknowledge her work as a journalist. She explains she still sees Runway as temporary and hopes to eventually return to serious journalism once this is over. She also reveals a publisher approached her about writing a book centered around a famous person, but they mainly want scandal while she wants to create something meaningful. This conversation quietly sets up the biggest internal conflict in the movie. Andy keeps insisting she's different from the fashion world, but little by little, she keeps getting pulled deeper into it. The following morning, Andy calls her friend and admits she's actually considering writing the book after all. Her friend gets incredibly excited and promises to secure an amazing deal with the publisher. Soon after, Amari informs Andy that Miranda personally invited her to a private gathering at her townhouse that weekend, and Irv specifically requested Andy's presence there. Realizing she has no idea what to wear, Andy immediately goes to Nigel for help. Nigel takes her into the fashion closet and starts selecting outfits while constantly reminding her the company's budget is now extremely limited. Everything has to be returned by Monday. Then Andy spots a stunning designer piece and practically begs Nigel to let her wear it. He reluctantly agrees under one condition: she brings it back completely spotless. Andy arrives at Miranda's townhouse the next day and is welcomed by Stuart before being introduced to an entire room filled with powerful celebrities, executives, and industry insiders. During lunch, Andy notices Miranda having a private conversation with Irv nearby. While trying to clean sauce off her dress in the kitchen, she unexpectedly runs into Miranda herself. Miranda quietly tells her that Irv plans to announce her as the new global head of content during his upcoming 75th birthday celebration. On top of that, Runway would finally receive a bigger budget again. Andy congratulates her, and Miranda surprisingly admits she always believed Andy would eventually become successful. Honestly, this tiny moment between them felt surprisingly sincere because Miranda almost never gives emotional validation to anyone. Not long after, Andy officially moves into her new apartment and prepares for Irv's massive birthday party with Peter accompanying her as her date. The event is packed with celebrities, fashion icons, and major media figures. Peter casually walks away to speak with Hugh Jackman, while Andy notices Benji Barnes attending the party with Emily. Nigel quietly reveals Emily and Benji have been dating for a while, although he describes Emily as more of a glamorous accessory in Benji's world. Meanwhile, Andy talks with Nigel about how shocking it is that he stayed loyal to Miranda after everything that happened years ago when she stole a major position away from him and handed it to somebody else. Nigel admits Miranda has betrayed him multiple times over the years, but he still chooses to stay beside her anyway. Andy tells him that if he truly wants something different, he eventually needs to stop staying silent about what he deserves. A little later, Emily introduces Benji to Andy, and he casually mentions he saw the article Andy wrote about Emily. Then he immediately admits he never actually read it, but thought the photographs looked incredible. That line perfectly captures the entire theme of this movie. Appearance constantly matters more than substance in this world. But before anyone can continue the conversation, a glass suddenly crashes onto the floor. Everyone turns around in shock as Irv collapses from a heart attack and dies right there at the party. The film then jumps to Irv's memorial service, where Jay approaches Miranda and tells her how much he admires Runway and everything she built. He claims he's excited to continue working with her moving forward. Emily and Benji are also present, although Emily spends most of the event making sarcastic comments aimed at Miranda. Andy quietly asks Nigel what Jay is actually planning to do with Runway, and Nigel darkly replies that things are probably about to get much worse. Andy tries staying optimistic and argues that Jay still needs their expertise if he wants the company to survive. But the tension in these scenes makes it painfully obvious that disaster is coming. Soon after, the team gathers for another meeting where Nigel presents ideas for an upcoming gala event in Italy featuring a giant musical runway show. Miranda is supposed to deliver her iconic speech there, and Nigel is still polishing the final draft. But throughout the meeting, everyone keeps worrying about Jay and the future of the company. Employees are terrified they're about to lose their jobs. Miranda repeatedly shuts the conversation down and forces everyone to focus on work instead. She even starts criticizing the models again before Amari carefully tries stopping her from saying something that could create another human resources complaint. Then Jay suddenly arrives at the office. Miranda invites him into her office where he compliments the space before casually asking her to join him for lunch in the employee cafeteria. The request completely horrifies her. For probably the first time in her entire career, Miranda Priestly walks into the cafeteria like a normal employee, while the entire office stares at her in disbelief. Jay introduces her to a brand new corporate team focused entirely on cutting costs and restructuring the company. One executive calmly explains their plans for layoffs and budget reductions while Andy and Nigel struggle to overhear the conversation from a distance. Eventually, Jen secretly records the entire meeting by sliding her phone beneath Miranda's chair. Later, she gives the recording to Andy, who rushes straight to Nigel after hearing executives discuss major layoffs, while Miranda simply sits there agreeing with them. But Nigel barely reacts at all, which honestly feels even more depressing because at this point, he already seems emotionally exhausted by the entire system. Later that night, Andy vents to Peter about everything happening at Runway. Peter argues that change is unavoidable, and compares it to how old buildings eventually disappear over time. Andy immediately pushes back and insists journalism cannot simply be treated like another outdated structure waiting to be demolished. Their disagreement escalates into a full argument, and Andy eventually tells him to leave. Before walking away, Peter calmly tells her they can reconnect someday if she wants. Feeling desperate, Andy later stands outside Miranda's townhouse debating whether she should interfere. Eventually she gathers the courage to ring the bell. Stuart lets her inside and sends her upstairs where Miranda is waiting. Andy passionately argues that Jay is going to destroy Runway and ruin countless careers if nobody stops him. But Miranda coldly tells her that none of this is Andy's responsibility and orders her to leave. After everything that happened, Andy finally goes home and makes a huge decision. She's going to write the book about Miranda after all. This ending hit hard because Andy starts the movie trying to escape Miranda's world, but now she's preparing to profit from it instead. The situation at Runway gets even worse during the next company meeting, when Nigel starts explaining all the brutal budget cuts they now have to accept. No more private cars. Everyone has to use Uber. No more business class flights either. Watching these ultra-elite fashion people react to basic economy travel like it's the apocalypse was actually hilarious. But at the same time, the movie is clearly showing that the empire Miranda spent decades building is slowly falling apart piece by piece. Soon the team boards a flight to Italy for the upcoming gala event, and for the very first time ever, Miranda Priestly is forced to sit in cramped economy class. Amari even asks the flight attendant for Chardonnay only to find out it's not available back there. That tiny scene honestly says more about Runway's downfall than any dramatic speech could. Once they arrive in Italy, everyone spends the next few days networking and preparing for the massive fashion event. During one evening out, Andy notices Benji buying Emily an incredibly expensive necklace at a jewelry store, and for a brief moment, she actually looks jealous, watching their glamorous lifestyle. Later that night, Emily is back in her hotel room, arguing with her ex-husband over the phone when Andy suddenly arrives saying she needs to discuss something important privately. The next morning before sunrise, Andy quietly sneaks out and runs into Nigel, who immediately suspects she's hiding something. Andy brushes him off and claims she's only going for a walk. Instead, she secretly joins Emily in a car waiting outside, and together they travel by boat to Benji's private Italian bungalow, completely unaware that Miranda saw them leaving together. At the bungalow, everyone sits together while Benji casually tells Andy stories about how he first met Emily. Then things get even more tense when Jay suddenly shows up there too. Later, Nigel again questions Andy about what she's hiding, but she refuses to say anything. Soon Miranda arrives and the group heads off to inspect the gala venue. While wandering through the building, Andy stops to admire a painting of the Last Supper. When Miranda joins her, Miranda explains that Leonardo da Vinci believed humans are naturally flawed and eventually betray each other no matter what. This scene felt like the movie screaming its themes directly at the audience because betrayal has basically driven every important relationship in this story. Suddenly, something clicks inside Andy's head, and she immediately runs off to find Emily, who is busy talking with Donatella Versace. Andy warns her that Miranda somehow already knows about their secret plan. Emily instantly panics and accuses Andy of exposing them, but Andy swears she didn't say anything. The two rush together to confront Miranda directly. Andy finally reveals the entire truth. Jay plans to cut Runway down so aggressively that the magazine will eventually die, so they secretly search for somebody rich enough to buy the company before that could happen. Emily then explains that Benji already made Jay an offer to purchase the publication. Andy genuinely believes this will save Runway and allow Miranda to remain in charge for years to come. But Miranda quietly says something devastating. She admits that while she and Emily have always had differences, she never expected Emily to betray her like this. Andy tries defending herself, but Miranda coldly clarifies that she's talking about Emily, not Andy. Then the real twist finally comes out. Emily reveals that Benji isn't buying the company for Miranda at all. He's buying it for her. Emily plans to become the new editor-in-chief of Runway herself. Andy is completely blindsided by this revelation and asks Emily why she would do something like that. Emily finally unleashes years of resentment and accuses Miranda of intentionally pushing her away from Runway years earlier by forcing Dior to hire her during the peak of her career climb. Miranda argues she only did it to protect the magazine because Emily lacked the vision needed to truly lead it. Emily fires back saying Miranda is wrong before storming out and promising that Benji's lawyers will contact them soon. This entire confrontation was probably the strongest scene in the movie because after years of loyalty, ambition, and manipulation, Emily finally says everything she's been holding in for decades. Afterward, Andy privately tells Miranda she had absolutely no idea about Emily's real intentions, but Miranda barely responds and dismisses her. Later, while getting ready for dinner, Andy receives a call from her publisher friend confirming that the book deal about Miranda is now worth $350,000. But Andy hesitates because she no longer feels comfortable betraying Miranda like that. Her friend insists she shouldn't feel guilty, but Andy says they'll discuss it once she returns home. That evening, everyone gathers for dinner, where Emily and Benji proudly discuss the upcoming takeover. Miranda quietly approaches Benji and asks about the progress of the deal. Benji says things are moving forward smoothly. Miranda comments that Emily must already have major plans for Runway but hopes the traditions of the magazine survive. Benji calmly replies that change is inevitable, and eventually all things come to an end. Miranda responds by defending Runway as a celebration of art, beauty, and creativity, but Benji simply reminds her that every era eventually dies. This conversation felt less like a business negotiation and more like an older generation realizing the world no longer belongs to them. Miranda later steps outside looking completely defeated while reflecting on everything she spent her life building. Stuart joins her and asks what's wrong. For probably the first time in the entire film, Miranda openly admits she's terrified, because soon she may not have a career anymore and she genuinely doesn't know who she'll be without it. Stuart gently reminds her that she still has him, her daughters, and the legacy she already created, but he also warns her not to rush into decisions out of fear. The next morning, Andy hears frantic knocking at her hotel room door, and discovers Miranda standing there ready for battle mode again. Miranda says they need to start working immediately. Over the next few days, Miranda aggressively attends every important fashion event possible while Andy secretly contacts people behind the scenes trying to arrange something huge. Eventually Amari secures an important backstage meeting Miranda requested. The two of them head backstage to meet Lady Gaga herself. Gaga jokingly tells Miranda that she knows Miranda never actually liked her. Miranda politely thanks her for performing, but Gaga laughs and reveals Nigel basically threatened her career if she refused. This tiny cameo was chaotic in the best way possible. Finally, Andy manages to contact the exact person she's been desperately trying to reach. During the gala event, she rushes to Miranda and says the deal is ready, but they need to leave immediately if they want to finalize everything. Miranda refuses at first because she still has to deliver the major speech at the gala. Andy then quietly tells her that maybe somebody else can finally do it. Miranda looks across the room and realizes Andy is talking about Nigel. Miranda approaches Nigel and admits she may have taken him for granted for many years. She says countless people betrayed her over time, but Nigel was always the one person who stayed loyal. She asks him to deliver the speech in her place. Nigel initially refuses because he believes nobody can replace Miranda, but she insists that if anyone can represent Runway after her, it's him. Nigel finally accepts while Miranda secretly leaves with Andy to finish the mysterious deal. Meanwhile, Lady Gaga begins performing at the gala while Nigel absolutely crushes Miranda's signature speech in front of the audience. This was one of the most satisfying moments in the entire movie, because Nigel finally receives the respect he deserved all along. The following morning, Emily, Benji, and Jay meet to discuss the official takeover. Emily is already planning future covers and even jokes that she should become the first cover model after the acquisition. But suddenly Jay receives a phone call informing him that another buyer just made a better offer for the entire publication. Without hesitation, Jay immediately sells the company to the new bidder on the spot. Emily is completely stunned and demands to know who bought Runway out from under them. Then comes the final twist. Miranda and Andy arrive to meet the new owner, and it turns out to be Sasha Barnes. Sasha explains that she now fully owns the publication, and Miranda can continue running Runway exactly the way she wants. On the drive back, Miranda surprisingly thanks Andy for waking her up and pushing her to fight for the magazine again. Then she completely shocks Andy by encouraging her to write the book after all. Miranda admits she already knew about the deal the entire time, and jokes that Andy should absolutely expose how terrible she is if it helps the book sell faster. But beneath the sarcasm, Miranda also admits something deeper. She genuinely loves what she does, and even temporary relevance is still worth fighting for. Andy says she doesn't want to betray Miranda anymore, but Miranda coldly replies that Andy was always trying to save herself anyway. Andy quietly accepts that Miranda may be right, but also says they now finally have a chance to build something meaningful together. This final exchange between them perfectly captures their entire relationship, because neither woman fully trusts the other. Yet somehow they still understand each other better than anyone else ever could. After returning home, Andy reconnects with Lily and gives her all the gifts she brought back from Italy. Lily asks whether Andy ever called Peter after their fight. Andy admits she was scared of saying the wrong thing. Lily encourages her to take the chance anyway. Andy eventually goes to Peter and apologizes, admitting she made mistakes. She tells him that neither of them is perfect, but maybe they can try being imperfect together. The two finally reconcile and kiss. Some time later, Andy also reconnects with Emily. Emily admits she let bitterness and jealousy control her decisions. Andy tells her everyone in their world has done messed up things at some point. Emily reveals Benji already dumped her, and now she works at Coach while trying to figure out her future. Andy encourages her by saying she doesn't need either Benji or Runway to succeed because she's talented on her own. Emily then reveals that years earlier, she actually tried calling Andy just to reconnect but lost the courage to follow through. Andy laughs and says she assumed it was just an accidental pocket dial. The two finally agree to become real friends again. Then Andy jokingly asks what's still wrong with Emily's eyebrows, and Emily promises she'll finally fix them. Back at Runway, Andy meets Nigel and comments on how strange fate can be. Nigel then reveals one last surprise. He was actually the person who recommended Andy to her for the new job because despite everything that happened years ago, he never forgot her. He tells Andy she was always meant to come back to Runway eventually. It just took longer than expected. Andy congratulates Amari and Charlie on their promotions before finally returning to Miranda's office with her latest work. Miranda silently looks through the pages while Andy waits for some kind of emotional reaction, but instead, Miranda simply tells her to get back to work. That final moment felt perfect because after everything these characters went through, Miranda Priestly still refuses to become soft. In the end, Miranda, Nigel, and Andy are now leading Runway together into a completely different future, and that was The Devil Wears Prada too. Personally, I actually enjoyed this way more than I expected because instead of trying to remake the original movie, it focuses on aging, legacy, ambition, and what happens when entire industries start dying around the people who built them. Some parts definitely feel dramatic and over the top, but the performances, especially Miranda, Emily, and Nigel, carry the movie hard. I would honestly give this movie a solid 8 out of 10. If you enjoyed this recap, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more movie breakdowns like this one. And trust me, the next movie we're covering gets even crazier.